Pens win 4-3 over the Columbus Blue Jackets on a Black Friday spectacle in Columbus, Ohio. It's a Metropolitan Division matchup, and it's a Penguins postgame edition on episode number 29, of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, and it begins now. Welcome to Sports for Beginners. This is the show where I cover the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Blue Jays, and take you on a journey through the world of sports. From the fans' perspective, here is your host, Scott McGregor. Let's have some fun. From down by 2 to coming all the way back to win it 4-3. Welcome in, Penguins fans. Welcome in, hockey fans in general. Welcome in, Blue Jacket fans. Welcome, everyone, to number 29, Marc-Andre Fleury's number, episode of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Another Penguins hockey night, and it's on Black Friday. What a spectacle for a Black Friday showdown between the Pens and the Jackets, two Metro Division foes who came into this game. The Penguins coming into this one pretty much looking for a little revenge over the Columbus Blue Jackets after the Jackets beat the Penguins in Pittsburgh in a shootout 5-4 2025, and they definitely got their revenge despite going down 2 goals after scoring a goal in the first period. And guess who that was? That was the captain himself, my favorite player as a Canadian hockey fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby, getting things started. Oh, before we get even into the scoring and the penalty summary, we got to get right down to business, talking about who's the coach and who the tenders are for this goaltending matchup. It was and Columbus. Well, we're going to figure out what their record is going into their next game. They dropped to 11-9-5 after the Penguins win the second game to tie the season series of a 4-game set between the Penguins and the Jackets. They'll continue that series in 2026 in January, but we'll get there when we get there. We're wasting time. Let's get right down to it. So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Here are your coaches. Behind the Penguins bench is Dan Muse, and he would be opposed tonight by Dean Rung. Apologies for that. Same thing goes for hockey players on the Penguins and the Columbus Blue Jackets, as well as officiating crew, which we're going to get to before we go between the pipes. And speaking of going between the pipes, we're going to do that once we get through tonight's officiating crew. In the officiating crew today, wearing the pinstripes, number 39 and number 13, the referees were Furman South, your referees for this game, wearing the numbers 39 and 13 in the pinstripes. Coaches out of the way. Now let's go between the pipes. And we're going to start off our opening portion of the show, wrapping up the opening segment with our penalty takers, going through the first and second period of penalties, which, surprisingly, both teams each took 2 penalties, and neither were able to score on the man advantage. We'll talk about that in the game stats portion coming up once we are through the scoring. But I talked about goaltenders. Let's go between the pipes. Going between the pipes for the Columbus Blue Jackets, number 73, Jet Greaves, is going to get the call from Dan E., his head coach, and Jet Greaves is the one who will get the start. In the backup, if needed, is number 90, Elvis Mers-Lincolns. Going between the pipes for the Pittsburgh Penguins as they are on a back-to-back. It's game 2 after a 7-game absence due to injury. Game 2 of the season, I should say, since the 7-game absence due to injury for Tristan Jarry. He will get the start against Columbus tonight. And number 37, Artur Shilov, is in there to back him up if needed. Obviously, it wasn't needed today, or tonight, I should say, but perhaps it could be needed against the Toronto Maple Leafs, which we'll talk about over the course of our show. All right, enough's enough. Time to get down to business. As I said, we are going to start our summary, wrapping up our first segment with the penalty takers. And to do that, we'll bring up NHL and specifically the penalty side of NHL, showcasing our penalty takers from each period. No penalties called in the third period. No penalties needed to be called in overtime, as just 58 seconds into overtime, number 58 of the black and gold ends the game. All right, here we go. First period penalties. The first one went to former Penguin Zach Aston-Reese at 2 minutes and 25 seconds. A 2-minute minor for high sticking. Parker Wotherspoon picking up the draw of that penalty. Speaking of drawing penalties, Charlie Coyle would draw the Kevin Hayes penalty a couple minutes later at 18 minutes and 23 seconds. A 2-minute minor to Kevin Hayes for holding Charlie Coyle, able to draw the penalty and the power play opportunity for the Columbus Blue Jackets. But the Penguins go on the man advantage first, and unfortunately, it was in that period. No, it was in the second period, actually, I should say. It was in the second period after the second and only other penalty the Blue Jackets would take, which went courtesy of Kevin Hayes drawing the penalty. Kent Johnson went to the box for tripping at 2 minutes and 46 seconds of the second period of play, at which time our score was 1-1. It was tied at a goal apiece. 1 goal for Pittsburgh, 1 goal for Columbus. Columbus would eventually score shorthanded, but we'll get there when we get to the scoring summary. Last penalty to talk about before we take the first commercial break of our show. As this is a season episode game recap of Sports for Beginners, the podcast, episode 29 of season 4. Well, let's just say Evgeny Malkin will get the only other penalty called on Pittsburgh tonight. 2-minute minor for tripping. Sorry about that, Zach, if I pronounced your last name wrong. Picked up the draw of the penalty on Evgeny Malkin. 2 minutes for tripping for Malkin at 7 minutes and 12 seconds. At which time, Columbus had taken a 2-1 lead after scoring short-handed. We'll get to the goals after we take our first commercial break of the program. Coming up on this Penguins post-game season edition of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Who scored in the third period? Who scored second period? Who scored in the first period? How did this game end 4-3 Penguins in overtime? What were the shots on goal after each period? What were our final shot totals? Who ended up as the 3 stars? The answers to come when we continue. Stick with us. Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
CNT Radio will never give you up. They will never let you down. Nor will they run around or desert you. So join Nick Astley for The Melting Pot every Saturday on CNT Radio. Hang on a minute. He's not Nick Astley. Oh, jings, I've done it wrong. Anyway, just join Nick for The Melting Pot on CNT Radio.
Take another look with Gerda Felix and Melanie Taddeo Malo, two powerful women of diverse backgrounds having genuine, unique, and uncomfortable conversations that everyone needs to have. Join Melanie and Gerda for conversations about what is missing from human connections.
Hi, Scott. it's Ali here. I just wanted to mention that I'm really enjoying the show and I'm really enjoying what you're putting together. And I wanted to just say I'm enjoying being a part of it as well. So please keep up the phenomenal work and make sure you guys keep this podcast going because it really suits you well.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Welcome back, everyone, to Penguins post-game on Season 4 of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Welcome back to episode 29, a Penguins post-game edition. It is a Black Friday edition of Penguins post-game, available on Season 4 of Sports for Beginners as episode 29. And of course, all of our season episodes that include Penguins post-game will also air on Penguins Postgame's newest home, On the Ice and Behind the Benches. Welcome in those joining us from On the Ice and Behind the Benches. We have scoring to get to. We've talked about the penalties, talked about the officiating crew, talked about the coaches, and went between the pipes. Now, before we go to the shots on goal, game stats, 3 stars, and whatnot, we have to get through the scoring portion. So here we go. Captain, oh my captain, Sidney Crosby, who scored 2 goals in the Penguins' 4-3 win over the Columbus Blue Jackets in overtime, picks up old teammate Chris Letang for Chris Letang's 8th assist of the season. At 6 minutes and 10 seconds in, the Penguins get the early lead, Crosby's 14th goal of the season, but it would not last long. Sean Monahan, former Calgary Flame, quickly ties the game up at 13 minutes and 40 seconds with his 3rd goal of the season. Brandon Smith, to make sure I get that right, for the Penguins, for the Blue Jackets, I should say, Brandon Smith picks up his 1st assist of the season. Damian Severson picks up his 7th assist of the season. Damon Severson, I should say, picks up his 7th assist of the season. Penguins and Blue Jackets, as mentioned before the shorthanded goal scored by Columbus in this game, are tied up at 1 after a period of play. Shots on goal for the period coming up when we get to the stats. But first, let's keep going through the scoring. Off we go to period number 2. In period number 2, it was Brandon Gauthier with his 1st goal of the season, getting the goal that responded to being short-handed after the Kent Johnson penalty at 2 minutes and 46 seconds. His 1st goal of the season, and it was a shorthanded goal to give Columbus their 1st lead of the evening. It's 2-1 Jackets. Time of the goal, 3 minutes, 51 seconds. Zach Warren picks up his 15th assist of the season. Miles Wood picking up his 2nd assist of the year. Charlie Coyle in the mix again, not for a draw on the penalty this one, but this is for the goal. Scored by Zach Werenski, his 9th of the season. I'm going to go with Zach W. Sorry, Zach, I tried to pronounce your last name correctly, I should say. But I'll go with Zach W. just because I wasn't able to pronounce it. I apologize in advance. Anyways, Charlie Coyle picking up the assist, his 12th of the year. That would make it 3-1 Blue Jackets. And that, of course, coming at 19 minutes and 56 seconds with literally 0.3 seconds left, or 3.5 seconds left in the 2nd period. After 40 minutes of play, it is the Penguins down by 2, 3-1. Columbus on top. After 20 minutes of play, we were tied at a goal apiece. Here we go, regulation period time. And Brian Rust sets the tone early. And not only does he do that, but for our American listeners, especially those who are Penguins fans, yeah, I know Thursday the Milkshake Factory was off for Thanksgiving, but hopefully you enjoyed yourself a Brian Rust rusty shake at the Milkshake Factory after the goal he scored in the 4-2 victory against the Sabres a night ago. on Wednesday night. Good news, you get to enjoy another one on Saturday. Brian Rust's 7th goal of the year. Erik Karlsson picking up his 14th assist of the season. 13 seconds in, it is the Blue Jackets 3 and the Penguins 2. And then guess what? I talked about him in the opening. Sidney Crosby scoring twice. Here is goal number 2. His 15th goal of the season leads to the game being tied at 3-3 apiece. Tommy Novak on the primary assist, his 6th of the season. Parker Wotherspoon, his 7th assist of the season. Parker also, as I mentioned, not necessarily getting assists until the 3rd period, but he also drew a penalty, which was in the 1st period of play. Kevin Hayes also drew a penalty after taking one in the 1st period. He drew one in the 2nd period. Anywho, the 6th assist of the season was only Tommy Novak's 1st assist of the game, as he picks up another assist after Crosby, Parker, and Tommy force overtime, connecting Wotherspoon and Tommy with Sidney Crosby to force overtime on a nice snapshot from Sid right past Jet Greaves to make sure at 8:28 in the 3rd period, 8 minutes and 28 seconds, the Penguins answered quickly and tied the game. But the comeback of down by 2 wasn't over until 59 seconds into overtime. When I put it in my notes, I said 58 seconds, but turns out it was actually 59 seconds into overtime that Christopher Letang hit just his 2nd goal of the season, and Tommy Novak, 2nd goal of the night, 2nd assist of the night, 7th assist of the season. Penguins win it on the Chris Letang 59 seconds overtime winner. 2nd goal of the year for Letang, and the Pens win despite being outshot. The total we're going to get to in just a few minutes. But while we are on our shared screen, before we go to the stats of the game, let's go to our 3 stars of the game, brought to you by on the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Pittsburgh Penguins TV and radio network, their respective sponsors. Here we go with the 3 stars as they are described. Your 3rd star went to Columbus Blue Jackets defenseman Zach Werenski, a goal, an assist, 2 points on the night. Your 2nd star went to Penguins defenseman Christopher Letang, 1 goal, 1 assist, and 2 points. And your 1st star might have been number 87 in your program, but tonight, for Penguin fans, he's number 1 in your heart. Sidney Crosby is your 1st star of the game. 2 goals, 2 points, no apples for Crosby, but the captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins, along with Christopher Letang and Zach Werenski. Sorry about that, Zach. I'm trying to pronounce your name correctly as we go. Zach W., Christopher Letang, and Sidney Crosby are your 3 stars of the game. Time now for your stats of this game and our final tally in the shots on goal. Columbus 29, Pittsburgh 24. Penguins being outshot 29-24 on the shots on goal, despite both teams tying in the shots on goal, just like they did in the game in the 1st period. 8-8 after 20 minutes of play was the shots on goal tally. The Penguins, however, did trail the Columbus Blue Jackets 13-7 after the second 20 minutes of play, the 40 minutes of play period. For the game, at that point, they trailed Columbus 21-15 at the end of 2 periods of play was the shots on goal for the period. By the end of regulation, both teams once again combined for 8 shots on goal. 8 shots on goal for the Penguins, 8 shots on goal for the Jackets. To eclipse 23 shots for the Penguins and 29 shots for the Blue Jackets. The Penguins with the only shot on goal that came off the stick of Christopher Letang to outshoot Columbus 1-0 in overtime, but ultimately for the game, the Columbus Blue Jackets, after regulation, despite losing this game, they get a point and also outshoot Pittsburgh 29-24. Face-offs for the game 59 faceoffs to a side. 29 of them were won by Pittsburgh. 30 of them were won by Columbus. Just about 51% of those faceoffs won by Columbus. Just about 49% of those faceoffs won by Pittsburgh. Both teams spent a combined 4 minutes in the box. Pittsburgh with the 2 hits better than Columbus at 18-16. Even though the Penguins were outshot 29-24, they had the most blocks. They had the most block shots, racking up 20 to the Columbus Blue Jackets' 14 blocked shots. 13 giveaways for the Penguins. The Blue Jackets took the puck away from Pittsburgh only 3 times today. Penguins did it 5 times to Columbus in Columbus, Ohio. And there we go. I'm going to wrap up this segment by dropping into the play of the game, brought to you by on the Penguins Radio Network, TV network, and their respective sponsors. We don't have a sponsor for the play of the game or the 3 stars of the game. So if you would like to get in on the action, odds are I believe you will. And even after this show hits the air, you can definitely do that. You could provide us with your play of the game, 3 stars of the game if you don't like how the 3 stars came out. You can also provide us with your shake of the game, which is our player of the game segment, and your game puck of the game. You can provide us with your 3 stars, your play of the game, your game puck of the game recipient, shake of the game recipient, all that jazz, by sending an email to sportsforbeginnerspodcast80 or by connecting with us on WhatsApp, however your podcast platform works, in comments on YouTube or on Spotify, or however your podcast platform works, as well as Discord. But if you have challenges using Discord accessibility wise, please refer to the WhatsApp group chat. With that being said, if we had a guest on our show with me tonight, which we don't, but if we did, I would give them the floor for the play of the game. But since we do not have a guest with us or someone with us to keep us on track here, I will give myself the play of the game here. And due to time constraints, we won't play audio, but I will leave a link to both teams' pages so you can check out the highlights from there. And by both teams' areas, I mean I will leave links to Penguins post-game interviews, Blue Jackets interviews, highlights, morning skate interviews, and so much more that you could check out on your own time, as I'm sure you will. For me, I got to go right to the third period. I got to go right to the third period where Brian Rust set the tone in the third period, and then Crosby answered and really put Columbus on notice and said, if you think you're going to get out of this game winning on home ice without us trying to mount a comeback, you have another thing coming. Again, that was Rust's 7th goal of the season. Erik Karlsson's 14th assist of the season. Another good game for Erik Karlsson. Back-to-back games that we have from the Milkshake Factory, providing you the official milkshake of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Of course, we're not sponsored by the Milkshake Factory. Just want to make sure I get that in there. But Penguin fans, Milkshake Factory was closed on Thanksgiving in America. Well, guess what? Saturday, thanks to Rusty, thanks to the Rush Stash, if you will, before the Penguins battle the Maple Leafs in Pittsburgh tomorrow night, you just scored yourself half off Rusty Shakes for the 2nd day in a row. Thanks to the Rush Stash, as we end the month of Movember, also known as November, but for everyone who has a mustache or any facial hair, they call it Movember. Anyways, the Rush Stash sets the tone in the third period, and it's good enough for my play of the game. All right, ladies and gents, when we come back on episode number 29 of season 4, our Penguins post-game Black Friday extravaganza, this post-game show recap will start to really ramp up and wrap up as we take a look around the PWHL, provide you an update on our next PWHL recap, also take a look at just a few of the 15 games on this slate for a little post-Turkey Day action in the NHL. The out-of-town scoreboard, shake of the game, game puck of the game, PWHL update on PWHL recap, and update around the P, as well as who's next for Columbus? Who's next for the Penguins following the Maple Leaf game, which is on Saturday? And then that's it for this episode of our season coverage. And that's it for this post-game edition of Penguins Postgame. And it all comes your way next. Stick with us. Still lots more to come. Don't go anywhere. There's more great conversations and content right around the corner. Sports for Beginners will be right back in a moment.
Looking for conversations on the world of broadcasting, sports media, and from time to time, my favorite sports teams? Listen to Broadcast Map with me, Ali Musa. To learn more about the show and to view the upcoming schedule, like the Broadcast Map Facebook page. Search Broadcast Map.
Looking for conversations on books and more, as well as tutorials on using your favorite devices and applications? You've come to the right place. Join us weekly on Spicy Techie, where Ali and Sienna provide insightful conversations, as well as useful tips and tricks to help you along on your technological journey. To learn more, tune into the show and like the Spicy Techie Facebook page. Search for Spicy Techie.
Now, let's take you back to the action. To the rink and field we go. We find Scott McGregor.
Pens and the Jackets, the topic of conversation, on this edition of Penguins Postgame, a season edition of Sports for Beginners coverage of Penguins hockey. And looking around the league here as we kick it off here, Penguins beat the Columbus Blue Jackets, as we know, 4-3 in overtime. Here's a look at some of the other finals, including the notable ones. The Toronto Maple Leafs fell 4-2 to the Penguins, Metro Division rivals in the Washington Capitals of Washington, D.C. in D.C. So they had a nice post-Turkey Day. Another team that had a nice post-Turkey Day was the Carolina Hurricanes, beating the Winnipeg Jets 5-1. Over in San Jose, the Sharks defeated the Vancouver Canucks 3-2. Brock Boeser with one of the Canucks goals. We needed a shootout in this game between the Ducks and the Kings, but the Ducks prevail 5-4 in the shootout. Over in Vegas, the Golden Knights fell 4-1 to the Montreal Canadiens. And over in Florida, the defending Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers fall 5-3 to the Calgary Flames. The St. Louis Blues in St. Louis beat the Ottawa Senators 4-3. And one last final we're going to look at, particularly the one that comes up after the Penguins battle the Maple Leafs. Their Metro Division foe and State Division foe beat the New York Islanders 4-3 in a shootout. And just for one more final from the Metro side, the New York Rangers beat the Beantown Boston Bruins 6-2. Still a few more games to final. We have the Devils and, of course, the Lightning and the Red Wings. We'll get to those a little bit later. And also the 8 o'clock games minus our game, which started at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 4 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. They were those 8 p.m. games between the Blackhawks and the Predators. The Mammoth and the Stars are still underway. The other two finals or the Red Wings and the Lightning and the Devils and Sabres. We'll get to those momentarily. But I promised you a little update from the PWHL, and we'll get to that in just a few seconds. But first, let's jump quickly over to the Shake of the Game, our Player of the Game segment. We call it the Shake of the Game. Want to be in on the action? Check into our WhatsApp group, message group. Send an email to sportsforbeginnerspodcast8231@gmail.com, or check into our Discord server unless you have difficulty accessing it, in which case go to the WhatsApp group chat or give us your thoughts via comment on YouTube, on Spotify, or however your favorite podcast platform works. For this segment, 3 stars, play of the game, and the segment coming up, Game Puck of the Game. Here we go. Without sharing the screen, I'm going to use it through my phone here as I have the NHL app up on my screen as well. Not on my screen, but, well, it's on my phone, actually. Anyways, we're getting off topic. Tonight, the Shake of the Game will start on the home side and go to Columbus Blue Jackets goal scorer Sean Monahan, who scored the first goal for Columbus tonight before his team took a 2-goal lead early and late second period. They would take that goal lead into the third period, and then unfortunately the Penguins found a way to score early and then score early in overtime to win the game as they rally past the Blue Jackets coming off a 2-goal deficit. They came all the way back from a 2-goal deficit to win 4-3 in overtime. All right, well, Sean Monahan started it off for the Columbus Blue Jackets, but they couldn't finish, and the Penguins took advantage of no goals being scored by Columbus in the third period. Goals by Brian Rust and then Sidney Crosby to force overtime. And the man going to get the Shake of the Game for the Pittsburgh Penguins tonight on the other side of the ice, it is the Penguins defenseman, Christopher Letang, who will get our Shake of the Game for tonight's 4-3 win in overtime over the Columbus Blue Jackets. Sean Monahan for the Blue Jackets, Shake of the Game. Christopher Letang for the Pittsburgh Penguins, Shake of the Game. The Game Puck of the Game, whether it goes to the goaltenders or a player on the squad, coming up in just a few minutes. But first, why don't we take a look around the Women's League before we think about coming back to NHL. Only one game on the slate here tonight on post-Turkey Day in America for the Thanksgiving holiday. And spoiler alert, the defending Walter Cup champions defeated the inaugural expansion team, the Seattle Torrent, who tried to play spoiler in week 1 to the Vancouver Golden Knights, the other expansion team in the PWHL, but to no avail as that one finished 4-3 in favor of Vancouver. Tonight they lose their home opener to the defending Walter Cup champion Minnesota Frost, 3-0 in Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. We'll talk more about that on the next episode of PWHL Recap, which will be following one of these 2 games on the Saturday slate tomorrow. We will be covering the Toronto Scepters home opener as they host the Boston Fleet, who did not have their home opener spoiled. They beat the Montreal Victoire 2-0 in their first game of action in the Boston Fleet home opener, winning their home opener. Montreal then came back with a 4-0 win over New York on Tuesday night. And tomorrow, Boston will try to play spoiler against Toronto at the Coca-Cola Coliseum in Toronto, Ontario. You can watch the game on the New England Sports Network, NESN, as well as across the PWHL website elsewhere except Canada and the States, as well as on the PWHL YouTube channel. And for those who are fans watching in Canada, like myself, I will be watching this game. It takes place on CBC to kick off CBC's coverage of the 2025-2026 PWHL season. The game time is 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 11 between Toronto and Boston. But the action gets going at 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Pacific, with the New York Sirens hosting their home opener from the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. New York Sirens will be hosting the expansion club, the Vancouver Golden Knights, as the Golden Knights play in their third game of the new season. They lost 5-1 to Ottawa on Wednesday night and beat the Seattle Torrent 4-3 in overtime last Friday as part of the opener doubleheader. It was the nightcap of that doubleheader, which also featured defending Walter Cup champion Minnesota Frost taking on the Toronto Scepters, and the Scepters played spoiler, beating Minnesota 2-1 at the Grand Casino Arena. Alrighty, more of that talk on our PWHL recap when it comes to Toronto and Boston. We are just about set to wrap this one up, but before we do, let's wrap it up here with the game puck of the game, and then get you set up, as well as take a look at the other games that we didn't get to between the NHL action on this Friday night, this Black Friday night. The other two games we didn't get to, the Red Wings final and of course the Sabres final. We'll get to that momentarily. And while we're at it, I guess we could add some of those 8 o'clock games, as they are just going final as we speak from the third period of play. But let's get to the game puck of the game first. And then of course we'll wrap it up by going over those games and setting the stage for the Penguins and the Maple Leafs, as well as who's next for Columbus. And we'll also remind you when these two clubs will clash again to continue their 4-game series 2026, 2025, 2025, 2026 season series. It will not be for the rest of this year. Their season series will continue in the new year, but we'll revamp that in just a few moments. Our game puck of the game tonight for the Penguins, that's going to go to 2-time goal scorer, my favorite player as a Canadian Penguins hockey fan, number 87, and your captain of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Sidney Crosby. Loved what I could have seen from Sid, and I know Joe Brand and the old 2-9er love what they saw from Sid when he was scoring the goals. Of course, there were a couple of questionable plays, a couple of questionable calls, but we could get into that on another episode of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. I won't get into that today. Over on the Columbus Blue Jackets side, despite losing 4-3, I still think Jet Greaves had a really nice game in goal for the Columbus Blue Jackets, gave up 4 goals on 24 shots, made 20 saves. Of those 4 goals, they were all given up at even strength. And one thing I forgot to mention on the stats was the power play. Both penalty kills go perfect 2 for 2, as the power plays go 0 for 2 tonight at Nationwide Arena. So quickly got that in there after we missed that during the stats portion of the game recap. All right, ladies and gents, this show, number 29 of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, in terms of an episode, as well as our Penguins post-game coverage, is just about ready to wrap it up. But before we do, as promised, let's take a look back at those games that we didn't get to and those games that have gone final. Earlier in the day, the Tampa Bay Lightning defeated the Detroit Red Wings 6-3. The Buffalo Sabres didn't have a good post-Turkey day, as they fell despite outshooting the New Jersey Devils 42-23. They fell 5-0 as the New Jersey Devils pick up the game's only, I should say, they pick up the only shutout of the night. And over in the 8 p.m. slate, these games have just gone final. The Utah Mammoth they fell 4-3 to the Dallas Stars. But the team that did win 4-3, 9 overtime, but 4-3 in regulation, besides the Stars who won at home, was the Nashville Predators, beating the Chicago Blackhawks 4-3 and outshooting the Blackhawks, well, not really, 20-27. And for the Dallas Stars, they win that game despite being outshot 30-28. Well, not really. The point is they win 4-3 over the Mammoth. And with that said, it's time to set the scene. We're going to do that without sharing my screen, starting on the NHL app with the Penguins' opponent tonight, which was the Columbus Blue Jackets. So, where did the Jackets go from here? Well, this was their final game of their November 2025 schedule, in which they lost back-to-back. And they're not on a back-to-back, meaning they don't play tomorrow night, but they lost to Toronto in overtime 2-1, and they also lost tonight 4-3 to Pittsburgh. Their 2-1 loss against Toronto happened on Wednesday night when the Penguins battled the Sabres, and the Penguins beat the Sabres 4 on that night as well. So it's off to December to kick off the next 5 games for the Columbus Blue Jackets. They are short pit stop in New Jersey to take on the New Jersey Devils on December the 1st, 2025. Then, speaking of short pit stops, they will have a short pit stop at home to face the Detroit Red Wings. Puck drops on December 4th, Thursday, December the 4th, 2025 at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Central, and 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Then it's a 3-game road trip with an Atlantic and then Metro division foes galore. First, they go head-to-head with Florida in a 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Central, 12:30 p.m. Pacific start time against the Florida Panthers. That is a back-to-back, which means they will hit the road to the nation's capital of America to take on the Washington Capitals on the following night after their game on December the 6th, which is an afternoon start against Florida. They will then take on the Washington Capitals at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Central, and follow that up at 7:30 on December the 9th with a visit to Carolina in Raleigh to take on the Carolina Hurricanes. So you got the Devils, Red Wings, Panthers, Capitals, and Hurricanes, close out their next 5 before they begin a 4-game home stand. Of course, our next 5 for the Blue Jackets included a 3-game road trip and a game at home as well before a 3-game road trip in Florida, Washington, and Carolina. They will then come home for 4 games against Ottawa, Vegas, Anaheim, and Minnesota with no back-to-back. And after they face the Kings to close out the first half of the season as we break for the Christmas break. All right, off we go to Pittsburgh to close us out here. And we start off with a homecoming cooking post-Turkey Day in Pittsburgh. As the Thanksgiving weekend continues, the Penguins will battle the Toronto Maple Leafs for the first and only time at PPG Paints Arena tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific, and they will take on the 10, 11, and 3 Maple Leafs. The Penguins going into that game will be 12, 6, and 5 when they face the Maple Leafs. They lost to the Maple Leafs in Game 1 back on November 3rd in Toronto. Game 2 in Toronto is December 23rd before we break for the Christmas holidays. Speaking of which, after the game against Toronto to close out November, this Saturday night in Pittsburgh, the Battle of Pennsylvania returns to our Penguins coverage as the Penguins battle the Philadelphia Flyers for the second time in a row. Their final meeting of 2025 for the 2025-2026 season series with the Flyers. The final meetings will be on January 15th and March 7th, 2026. They will battle the Philadelphia Flyers, who currently sit, as we speak with you, at 13, 7, and 3 on December the 1st, 2025 at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 4 Pacific. That kicks off a 3-game road trip for the Penguins. They will see the Tampa Bay Lightning on Thursday night, December 4th, 2025. Then they're back in action on December 7th at 6 p.m. Eastern as they take on the Dallas Stars from Dallas to open up a 2-game series with the Dallas Stars that will open up in Dallas, Texas, and finish up inside PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh in 2026 later in the month. After that, as we wrap up the next 5, which include Toronto, Philadelphia, Tampa Bay, Dallas, they will open up a 5-game homestand where they will start with the Anaheim Ducks, Montreal Canadiens, and then wrap it up with San Jose, Utah, and Edmonton coming to town on Saturday night, Sunday afternoon, and Tuesday night, December 16th, 2025. The homestand, however, kicks off on December 9th, 2025, and continues on December 11th. All games except for Edmonton, Utah, and San Jose's game are at 7 p.m. East, 6 p.m. Central, p.m. Pacific, and also the Dallas game is at 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Mountain, and that is in Dallas. So it's the Penguins and the Maple Leafs when we talk to you next on Penguins postgame for our coverage of Penguins hockey on the ice and behind the benches. But that will do it for this episode of Season 4 of Sports for Beginners, the podcast. Episode number 29. The Penguins beat the Blue Jackets. They tied the season series a game apiece with a 4-3 win over the Jackets tonight in Columbus, Ohio. These teams will duke it out again on January 4th, 2025 at 3 Eastern, 2 Central, 12 p.m. Pacific, January 4th, 2026. And then they'll wrap things up on January the 17th, right back in Pittsburgh. But they're right back here at Nationwide Arena, January the 4th of 2026 of the new year. Until then, the series will stay where it is, tied, win apiece. Columbus beat the Penguins on October 25th, 5-4 in a shootout. Tonight, the Penguins, on November 28th, 2025, beat the Jackets 4-3 in overtime. Who's going to win the final 2 games? Who will win the series? We'll find out when we hit the new year. But for now, that is it for this one. Thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate you being with us for the show, whether it's a season content episode, a post-game show, which will continue when our season content takes a hiatus right at the Christmas break, as we also break for New Year's as well. Hope you'll enjoy our bonus coverage until then, until season number 5 kicks off for Sports for Beginners. Perhaps before we say goodbye to 2025 for Penguins season coverage of season 4 of Sports for Beginners, we'll have at least 2 more games added to the season episodes. When will they be? You'll find out over the course of the next few weeks. That is it for this one, everybody. Hope everybody in Pittsburgh and everybody across the states, no matter what happened in the sports world, had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Happy holidays to all who celebrate the holiday season and Christmas, Hanukkah. They're around the corner and the countdown is on. Rather, it is kicking into high gear for the Christmas season. But the countdown to 2026, if you're counting down to 2026 minus Christmas, the countdown is on. November is in the books as of Sunday, and Monday we start a new month. We start the final month of 2025. Where will these teams be at when they next clash? It remains to be seen, as Mike Lang always does at the end of every Penguins victory. I do it win or lose. Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has just left the building. The Penguins beat the Jackets 4-3 in overtime. Thank you so much for being with us. We'll talk to you after Maple Leafs and Penguins on the next edition of Penguins Postgame. As for our next season show, spoiler alert, a special conversation takes place on episode 30 of season 4. Find out what that is when season 4's episode 30 hits the air. You won't want to miss it. With that being said, as always, Penguin fans, let's go Pens. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to Sports for Beginners. If you would like to learn more about the show, you can visit the podcast Facebook page or visit the official website. You can also send us an email at sportsforbeginners podcast8231@gmail.com. As we always remind you, it is not goodbye, it is until next time.